Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Resident Rulebreakers. I'm Kayla.
And I'm Camille.
And this episode of the podcast, we are going to be interviewing Malcolm-Jamal Warner, who plays our favorite cardiothoracic surgeon, AJ the Raptor Austin. We were so excited that Malcolm agreed to do the interview, and we've been playing it and everything, but Camille got to ask Malcolm her dream question.
Yeah, Malcolm is he's so nice. Seriously, you guys, you always hear people say that they're nice, but sometimes you kind of wonder, oh, is that just because you work with him? You know what I mean? But he's really nice. He's so down to earth and not uppity at all.
No.
So, and I like that. He's a really good guy and stuff. And yeah, my dream came true. So now we gotta work on yours.
Yeah, we talked with Malcolm about his, obviously his origin and some of his thoughts on what happened with Bill Cosby and
We pretty much talked a wide range of topics, from his obviously starts as community theater actor to now as the Raptor. And we didn't just talk about his acting career, even though we could have just talked about it. But we also talked about Black Lives Matter and Me Too movement and stuff, because it's all relevant to him anyway.
yes.
What's so great is that he's using his platform. If you're like Malcolm, who recognizes that you have fans and you're in a platform and people are listening to you and stuff like that, use that voice, use that power that your fans have given you to speak out on things that affect your fans.
So, and we also talked to him about AJ, his audition process, and working with Shawnette and Minator, and his poetry. Malcolm was wonderful, and we're so excited to have him on the podcast. For you guys who are asking, if you want any of the other main cast members, say Matt, prime example. Here's how you help us. Go to our Patreon and donate whatever amount you're capable of donating. Support the podcast. That's the only way. If we go through the channels of the agent and everything, then it's $5,000. So the Patreon was set up to help fund the podcast. So go to www.patreon.com/The Resident Podcast. And you can go there, donate whatever dollar amount you want, and we'll use that money, go back into the podcast.
We're not asked. It's like you can donate $1 a month. That's it. It's not like anything. Shoot.
Without any further ado, here's Malcolm.
Thank you for joining us, Malcolm. This is I'm not even joking with you when I say that this is a dream come true.
She's been talking about this for a while.
I'm glad you're doing this. Actually, thank you for being such a big supporter of the show. We're in Atlanta.
You're already in Atlanta.
Oh, you're in Atlanta already?
We never left Atlanta. Once the show shut down, and because of COVID and everything, we have a 3-year-old daughter, so we didn't feel comfortable getting on a plane and going back home, with our daughter. So we pretty much stayed here.
You've been part of this industry for 40 years. Have you always wanted to be an actor?
It's funny. Before I started acting classes or anything, I was like 6 or 7 years old. And I made this proclamation to my parents that I was going to be famous, and I was either going to be a famous actor, a famous poet, or a famous basketball player. And let's just say, my basketball game's not that great, but the acting and poetry, I'm in there. But I didn't start acting until I was about 9, and I was doing community theater. really. And it wasn't so much. It wasn't so much I was doing theater because I was going to be on television. It was just kind of my mother was always looking for things for me to do outside of going to school and hanging out with my friends. So I was on the basketball team. Then this one year basketball season was over, and my mother's friend suggested this community theater, this acting workshop. And I was like, sure. I was 9. I went down. I had to audition to get in. And once I got in, I was doing theater, and it was something that I absolutely loved. So I think after the first year of doing theater, I knew that acting is what I wanted to do.
What was like your first community theater role?
So it was a play. It was a play called Alice, Is That You? And the premise was it was based on The Wizard of Oz. Dorothy, wakes up, finds herself in Oz, and everybody thinks that she's Alice from Alice in Wonderland.
Oh.
And I played the Tin Man.
Oh, cool.
And it was pretty awesome. I enjoyed being on theater, being on stage. I really enjoyed the first curtain call where, you come out afterwards and, I came out and people standing up and laughing and clapping. I was like, I think I can get into this.
Like, I like this.
Yeah, man. So that was, so by that time, by 9, I kind of knew that theater was, that acting is what I really gravitated toward and really grabbed me.
Were there any roles that you tried out for that you really wanted but didn't get?
It's interesting. Most of the roles that I've gone out for and didn't get, a lot of them I haven't seen. I don't know if they ever made it to the light of day. And then some of the things that I have seen, I understood why I didn't get it. Sometimes, sometimes, there's another actor that gets cast and like, oh, I get it. Like a perfect example, I was talking about The People versus OJ. And I auditioned for Chris Darden.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was probably.
Was that Sterling?
What do you say?
Was that Sterling who got that role?
Sterling, yeah. But when I auditioned for
anybody, that's a great person to lose to.
Well, so that's my point. Like, it was a great audition. I got like crazy great feedback, and then I didn't hear anything. So I was like, okay, well, clearly somebody had a better audition. And when I finally got the call, they called me and offered me the role of AC. So then when I met Sterling and I saw Sterling's work, I was like, yeah, of course. More power. Yes, you got that. So, it's a much better feeling when you see a role that you didn't get and there's like a really good actor who got cast versus getting a role and you see somebody, a hack doing the job. You're like, oh, come on, man.
Yeah.
But this business, the thing I always tell people, this business is 90% rejection. People who work a lot. I work a lot. I've been blessed enough to have, a fairly consistent career since I was 13 years old. But as much as I work, there's 90% of the stuff I go out for that I don't get. So this is a business that's also, it's all about rejection. We face rejection. It's a daily part of our lives.
One of your most popular roles is obviously Theo Huxtable, as in the Cosby Show. It was just like 80s and stuff. How is it working with Felicia Rashad and Bill Cosby?
It
and
was
the whole
awesome.
cast.
Yeah, we had such a great time on that show, and I think one of the reasons the Huxtables, came off so likable and lovable is because we all really genuinely liked each other, and there was a mutual respect, that everyone had for each other. And oftentimes people will come on the show and be really amazed at the energy and the vibe of the set, because normally people are used to going to sets where, you know, people are miserable, you know, the two lead actors hate each other and they're always arguing, or there's always, you know, so much ego on the set that it's, you know, it's palpable. And people, guest actors will come on our show and just really be impressed and always comment on how, just how good the, you know, the energy and vibe was on the set.
Yeah.
So much to the point where I didn't understand that, you know, until it was expressed to me time and time again. I didn't understand that was a rarity. I didn't get that, you know, being on most sets can be stressful and ego ridden. And, you know, I've come to find out that, you know, what we had on that show was a rarity.
Did accusations against Bill change the way how you looked at him or how you looked at your work on the Cosby Show?
Right. No, I think the experience of the show is what it was, and the experience that the world had with the show is what it was. I mean, it was a great. I mean, it's still a great show. You know, it's still a timeless show. It's still relevant. You can hold it up to anything that's on TV today, and you can see why that show is a classic. I think with what's happening, you know, now, you know, at one point, you know, someone had asked me if I thought that, you know, the accusations, everything, and the charge would ruin the legacy of the show. And at one point, I felt that you know, of course, it tarnished the legacy of the show, just because, you know, for a large period of time, you couldn't even find the show on television, you know. And then I watched an interview with Keisha Pulliam, and, you know, someone asked her the same question, and she was like, "No, the legacy can never be tarnished, because there's a generation of people who went to college, you know, because of that show and because of Different World. There's a generation of people who, you know, they wanted to go to college, they wanted to become professionals, they wanted to be doctors and lawyers because they watched the show. They wanted to create families and have loving families because of what they had seen with the Huxtables." And so she was like, you know, that stuff you can't take back. So that does not ruin the legacy of the show. So when I think about the legacy of the show, and I think about all of our experiences on the show, that's an experience that can be that can be touched and can't be tarnished. I think you know what's happening now. You know, it's a different world. Excuse the pun, but you know, we're in a place where there is a level of awareness that everyone has, that I think is, you know, great for the progression of progress, if that makes sense, you know. So I think, you know, with everything that's happening now with the Me Too movement, I think we're at a turning point, you know, and I think we may not have gotten to this turning point if it weren't for, you know, what's happening with Mr. Cosby, with, you know, Harvey Weinstein, just all the stuff that's coming out. It's at least making everyone, you know, be more aware of what's going on. It doesn't, again, it doesn't tarnish my experience on the show, because, you know, what's happening, you know, with him now, you know, none of that was part of my experience with him.
Yeah.
So my experience with him is quite different. So that experience is what it is. And like I said, I don't think that can be be tarnished. Yeah, because that's, you know, that's what it was. I think now when we, you know, fast forward to, you know, the present, you know, you look at and I've got there's my feelings about the whole situation run the gamut. And I think, where I am now, as I said, there is a culture of, there's a culture of misogyny, that, it's on television, it's in our music, it's, when it comes to life, there's a, good old boy system, and this is just how it is. And so again, when I talk about being at a turning point, like all of those things that would happen in the good old boy system, all of the, all of the misogyny, the sexual assault, even if it's just verbal, like those things that used to be okay, because it just was what it was and everybody saw it. I'm not saying everybody saw it with Mr. Cosby. I'm not pointing him out. I'm saying, but everybody saw everyone's aware of what this culture was. Whereas I think now there is much less tolerance. I want to say zero tolerance. I think we're moving towards zero tolerance, but there's much less tolerance of that. And there's much more of an awareness on everybody's part. So I think things that people used to be able to get away with, even, making jokes or making comments, that doesn't fly anymore in the manner that it used to. So when I look at, where we are now, again, I go back like, okay, we're really at a turning point. I think about the Me Too movement. I think about the Black Lives Matter movement. And I'm just looking like, wow, this is an opportunity to completely change the tide of what we allow to go on, in front of our eyes. I hope that makes sense.
You appeared on The Resident. Your first episode was 112, which was actually called Rude Awakenings in the Raptor. We know that you were a fan of The Resident before it ever aired, but what attracted you to auditioning to be the Raptor?
Sure. Well, so what happened when I first started the show, I had seen the pilot. So I think the show had not started airing just yet. And then by the time I started working, I think a couple episodes had aired. So I had really only seen the pilot. But what I loved about the Raptor was that he was, very different from what I'm normally cast at. I'm the nice guy, I'm the sweet guy. So when I
That's
saw
what
this
Amy
guy
said during our interview too. She was like, "That's so different than what Malcolm usually." But it's so funny because she told us from her point of view what your initially was. She said that looking through your list of names, so whatever, so your name popped up, and she was like, "That's who I want to audition." Or whatever. But Todd was like took a little convincing.
Sure.
But
sure,
yeah.
and I get that. I totally get that. But I just love the fact that this guy was, what I really love is here's a guy whose arrogance, doesn't come out of compensating for insecurity. Like this guy has an arrogance because he's good at what he does. He has worked hard for where he is, and he's unapologetic about that, and brash. And for me, I feel like the Raptor is who I don't allow myself to be in real life.
Want to be?
I think that there's a part of me that would love to just be completely, not concerned about how what I say lands on other people. Just put it out there. But that's not how, when you grow up in this business and you early on are a child having to navigate through this adult industry, there are a lot of things that you learn, in terms of professionalism. And I think, that in addition to, I'm a sensitive person, I've been raised by sensitive parents. So I think I have always grown up with this weight or this concern of how other people see me. So to play a role, to play a guy who doesn't have any of those concerns at all is a great experience for me, because it really allows me to truly step in his shoes and, like I said, feel that freedom that I don't necessarily always allow myself to feel in real life.
Are there any similarities at all between you and him?
Well, I would say that inside of me, somewhere close to the surface, is the Raptor. And I think it's probably better for me to be able to, for that
You're
side
like
of
the
me.
muted version of the Raptor.
Yeah. That's great. And I think that part of me that's right beneath the surface, I think it's better for everyone that he gets to have his play in this experience of the Raptor than having that in real life. Like, I actually care about, how what I say lands on someone else or how it affects someone else. So there's a lot of thoughtfulness and mindfulness that is, it's a part of me, but it's also, that's also it's also a practice. Mindfulness is a practice. So, sometimes there's again, it's part of what I do and I'm good at it and I've been doing it for such a long time, but still there is you have to be mindful of being mindful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That takes energy and that takes a certain level of work. Whereas you've got someone who doesn't even think like that. There's just a freedom to say whatever is on his mind.
The chemistry between you and Shawnette was like palpable from the beginning. Actually, that leads to our next question, which is, are you a fan of Minator?
I am, yeah. I love that. I love the camaraderie. I love the energy. I love the underlying heat that's always present there. And what's so funny is there are times where, like, I'll watch the show and, like, there's a level of connection and attraction and heat, if you will, that, Shawnette and I, it's not, we're not, intentionally trying to play that. Like, when you see OR scenes and we've got scrub cap and mask and all you see are eyes within the goggles, there's still an energy that you feel between these two.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I love Shawnette so much. And, I love working with her just because there's just a really great dance that we get to do. And, and a shorthand, if you will, because it's not like, she and I, discuss scenes beforehand or any of that. It's just, there's just we do our thing and then we come and we dance. And it's always so much fun working with her because she's so good. Like, I watch the show and my wife and I will sit there and be like, gee, she is so good.
Yeah, she's really good.
Yeah.
Well, what kind of developments would you like to see with the couple next season?
I don't know. Look, one, I never ask what they have planned in terms of Amy and Todd, because I'm a fan of the show. Also, there's a part of me that, as I'm reading the scripts, I like to just kind of enjoy the ride and see where it goes. But I think for my money, I think one of the, I love, there's an energy that everyone wants this to happen. And I kind of like it staying in that place, because if you cross that line, you can't go back.
We're tired of waiting, though. I'm not joking with you. I'm tired of waiting. It's like I feel like we're already done waiting. We've been waiting for like 3 seasons already. Can y'all like kiss? I mean, y'all kissed, and I was like, yes, you guys kissed.
Yeah. But we talked to Marquis, who wrote that episode.
Yeah.
And he was like, Amy, we've got to give them this. They're waiting. That's exactly what he said.
Well, I think there'll be some good stuff in season 4 that will, in that regard, keep you on the edge of your seat.
Do you have any behind the scenes funny moments you want to share?
I really don't. Like I'm always the wrong person to ask. Yeah, because it's just the whole journey of being on the show and the camaraderie that I had with Shawnette and Matt and Bruce, and Emily and Manish. We're just all cool, man. So, I think the things that happen, the jokes that happen are, I don't know, they come from an organic place, but it's I don't know, I think because that vibe is ever present and the fun that we have with each other is ever present, there's not like anything that, that for me stands out that is, anecdote worthy, especially if you weren't there.
Yeah, all of we've interviewed so many people and all of them talk so highly about you. It's
that's fun. Well, that's cool. That's cool. I mean, like I like to have fun, and because of my experience on Cosby, where we had so much fun. There's always a time to there's a time for fun, there's a time to be serious. But I'm always in the place of we work long hours, so if there's something that comes up that I think is funny, oftentimes it'll come out. And then a lot of times on camera too. Like the one thing I really love is Amy gives me, really great leeway to ad lib. So there are times often where I'll ad lib, and they keep it in the show, which is great because everybody doesn't get that shot. But I love the fact that Amy trusts me enough to to fully inhabit the Raptor, where again, Malcolm can come up with things and say things because in this moment I am the Raptor, and this is what as the Raptor I'm feeling right now. And fortunately, a lot of times it's on point enough and consistent with the role and what's going on enough that they tend to keep a lot of those ad libs.
What name one? Like, what example do you have of an ad lib?
Oh, well, I think early on, my first episode, because I had just seen, the Black Panther had just come out. So, I knew Princess Nakia. So, I was always calling Mina Princess. And Mina hated it, and every time I would do it and I'd get this reaction from Mina, I always feel like Shawnette might hate that too because it's so weird. But it's stuff like that. Like I love when they keep that stuff in. There was I got a couple of good ones in there.
We love hearing all these stories about the behind the scenes stuff. It's like candy for us.
We love seeing AJ's biological family and his adoptive family storylines on the show. Like that was probably one of my favorite storylines for the 3rd season. And
sweet.
How was it working with David Allen Greer and Adrian Lennox and Denise Dowse and Michael Chow? How was it working with them?
I mean, it was awesome. I mean, obviously, like everybody else, I've kind of grown up watching David Allen Greer. We all know him from Living Color. So, it's been cool to watch his career. Again, someone who is known for doing comedy, you know, but, you know, has dramatic chops and really wants to be in that dramatic world. And that's always been my journey. Like, you know, when I first, you know, Cosby had really been my first comedy role. So, you know, whenever in between acting work or, you know, or other acting work I would get or theater, I would always be looking to do more dramatic work because I've always wanted to, you know, to really, you know, use those muscles. So I had always admired his, you know, crossing over to being, you know, accepted, you know, as a dramatic actor. So there was that vibe that we had, that similarity that we had. And, you know, I know Michael, you know, from Major Crimes, you know, having been on that show for, you know, for a couple of years as a recurring. So it's great having that prior working relationship with him. And then Adrienne Lennox, who plays my birth mom, we actually did a stage production of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, where she played my mom. So, you know, so we had already had a prior working, you know, relationship. So, yeah, so it's very cool to actually be, you know, and I've always been an admirer of her. So to be able to work with her actually in the television format was really awesome.
Denise, you said to me, was your acting coach, right?
Denise used to be my acting teacher, my acting coach. She has been a family friend for like the past 25 years. So that was really a special treat for us to be able to work together in that capacity, you know, because like I said, because like, you know, for the last 25 years of my life, she's been such a big part of my life and has been family. So it was awesome to be able to work together.
We actually, because while we're in hiatus, sometimes we go back and rewatch an episode and then discuss it.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually watched Flesh of My Flesh, which was the episode where David's first episode that you meet him for the first time.
Yeah.
And the one things we were like, wow, like the way y'all were interacting was like a mirror. And we were just like, is that like, was that on purpose, or did he actually watch you previously in the show? Because it was so good. On point.
Yeah. Well, that was definitely part of, that's part of what, you know, Amy wanted to convey, you know, even in the script, that even though these two people had never physically met before, and, you know, this man did not raise AJ, you could still see how much alike they are. So that was kind of, you know, it was intentional, you know, because that's kind of the way Amy had set that up and wanted that to be.
What is the most awkward scene you've had to film, and how is filming surgery?
Well, awkward scene we had to film that did not make it in the show was Kieran, the actress from Major Crimes, by the way, Andrea. We actually had a bedroom scene together.
Oh my God.
The fandom would have not really liked that one too much, I don't think.
Especially on the Minator.
It didn't make the episode, but that wasn't awkward. It was fun, but it was awkward.
I imagine that like bedroom scenes are awkward in the first place, especially considering
they are.
They're not. That's not your like significant other. And one and two, you have like 50 people with you.
Exactly. And fortunately, you know, I've known Kieran for years as well. And she is such a nut. Like, we laughed the whole way through. But it was still awkward. And then the OR scenes, the surgery scenes are always, I mean, I'm always amazed at the you know, our special effects crew. And, you know, just the way they've got these these, what's the word? Cadavers?
Organs and blood and everything.
Yeah, you see, and you know, and they look real, and then, you know, so even if they don't look real initially, like say, you know, you appreciate the artistry and how they made the material, and then the moment they slap some blood on there, and then sometimes it's not just the blood, it could be a spray bottle with some glycerin. And once they just spray that, you're like, ooh. You know, it's a whole process, but our crew gets mad props for what, you know, they pull off, and we all get to pull off in those wars.
Well, a fake question actually wanted to know, like, how is it, say on the medical terms, like, do you get tongue-tied or whatever?
Yeah, usually every episode there's one that no matter how much I work on, it always trips me up. Like one episode I had coagulopathy. And then the next episode I had something else that was just way out. Part of the challenges of doing those OR scenes is, you know, oftentimes there's not necessarily a lot of emotion that is put in the dialogue that's in those OR scenes. So there's when you've got this jargon that you have to, you know, do the research to find out not just how is this word pronounced, but what does this actually mean? If you put all that work into, you know, being connected and making connections with dialogue that don't necessarily afford you an emotional connection, but you still have to connect to that dialogue, make the words fall trippingly off the tongue, and still do the coordinated movements that you have to with the surgery. I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into those scenes, and we can spend, you know, there have been times where we spent a couple of days in an OR. There's one time we spent like 3 days back to back shooting all OR scenes. It was everybody was tortured and worn out by the time we finished those 3 days.
You're also a Grammy-winning musician and poet. What are some artists and poets that you look up to?
One of my favorite poets is Prentice Powell from Oakland. Also, Obi West. I just discovered Obi West on Instagram this year in one of these poetry challenges. Obi West he's such a beast with the poetry. Talame C has been, I've been a fan of his for 20 years now.
Wow.
Saul Williams, Ursula Rucker, the legendary Black Ice. Those are cats I really, really dig. Also, Will the Real One, who was a good friend of mine, a really awesome poet who got killed a couple of years ago in front of his own poetry venue in South Florida. But he was also, he still remains one of my favorite poets. He's just so awesome. So there's a handful of poets who I really look up to and look to for inspiration.
That was actually the next question. What inspiration do you use when you write?
It varies. It varies. I mean, there's sometimes I can write, you know, a full piece while driving. Or I could be in the shower and like a phrase comes up and I put that down. There are poems that have taken me years to write. I've got a couple of unfinished poems that I've been writing over the course of years. So, you know, the process and the inspiration can really come from a lot of different places. But I think a lot of poets, a lot of us probably write more when we're hurting, when we feel the need to vent. There's so much that comes out in that expression. And for me, I needed poetry to have that avenue of expression and be able to express myself in a way that I can't necessarily do as an actor or as a director.
Yeah.
So I've always needed poetry, but I do find that if it's more challenging to write a poem when I'm not
You're
hurting.
happy.
You're happy, yeah.
We see you use your social media platform to speak out on Black Lives Matter. What do you think is different now that there's a noticeable change in Hollywood, where actors, TV executives, networks, etc., are now taking a stance?
Sure. I think it's what I was saying earlier, about being at a turning point. I think we are at a turning point where there is such an awareness, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the Black Lives Matter movement, really gets as much credit, because all of this forward movement, this awareness, has really stemmed from the Black Lives Matter movement and their consistency and keeping these issues at the forefront, to the point where it's impossible to ignore. So I think we're at a really, and again, I say, we're at what can be a really important turning point if the awareness doesn't go away. So we're in a place now where, we're seeing all of these changes, not just in the industry, but, now there's the whole discussion of the Confederate flag and the
Changing the name for the bases and stuff.
Yeah. So all of that stuff is being talked about in a way that it really hasn't before. And I think the civil rights movement, was obviously incredibly important and significant. But I think what's also different with this is technology and social media. And, to be in the 60s and to turn on your television and watch the news and see people being sprayed with fire hoses and attacked by dogs and beat, that was an atrocity, that the world, witnessed. And I think that, exposed so much and brought so much awareness, whereas now we're seeing this stuff often in real time. And there's just a really great energy that's happening in the world. Again, when it comes to, very, very, very low tolerance for the misogyny and the racism. So again, if we have to do the work in keeping these issues at the forefront, because having the awareness is one thing, but now we got to keep people aware and keep these conversations going on. And it's where, with that, everyone has to do their part of the responsibility of having these conversations and calling certain behaviors out. And and again, not just for when it comes to racism, but misogyny as well. It's a responsibility that those of us who are aware now have to keep that awareness at the forefront of everybody's mind, which requires, that requires having some very hard conversations. And that requires being willing to risk relationships. Because you're going to often be talking to people, the people who need to be spoken to will oftentimes be the most resistant.
Yeah. Have you ever faced discrimination or racism or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are so many different levels to racism So I think when you're a person of color, it's something that one you deal with on a daily basis. I mean, it's, you know, we see, again, we see it on television. It's in our music. You know, it's, you know, racism has become a form of entertainment. You know, it's become a marketing tool. So I think as a person of color, it's something that we often experience. You know, I've had some experiences like pre-Cosby, but I think one of the fortunes that I've had about my career and being on Cosby and being as highly recognizable as I've been, that has definitely, you know, kept me from being in certain situations that could have gone another way. But there's still so I think even with that, there is a responsibility that, you know, I personally carry, that I personally shoulder, because I know everyone, you know, other brothers who get stopped by the police don't have, you know, celebrityhood to save them, to protect them. Yeah. So, you know, I'm very aware of that. And it's one of the reasons why I feel like, you know, I have a platform. It's like, so my father named me after Malcolm X and Ahmad Jamal. My father was very active in the civil rights movement. When I would go to Chicago to visit my father during the summers, he would make me read books and do book reports. He had this really thick book called Great American Negroes. And, you know, chapters on Langston Hughes, Richard Wright, Mary McLeod Bethune, Marian Anderson. And my father would make me read these chapters and write book reports during my summer vacations. 6, 7, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. So there was a certain sense of self, sense of history, sense of culture, and sense of the Black experience that my father was instilling in me at a very early age. So, you know, I often talk about, you know, when I talk about, you know, social awareness and social consciousness and using my voice, you know, my father, my biological father, gave me the voice. Mr. Cosby gave me the platform and showed me how to use the platform. But that comes from, you know, I mean, my dad named me Malcolm-Jamal. I mean, he kind of set me up.
What would you like to see overall for the Raptor in season 4? I think because the Raptor loves medicine and loves this field so much, I'd like to see him, just as, you know, we're just talking about social consciousness and Black Lives Matter movement. You know, it'd be really interesting to see the Raptor, you know, because of Red Rock and because of the bureaucracy, you know, to see AJ, you know, really flex and take a stand and, you know, fight for the integrity of what the medical field is. And I think we've kind of set him up that way anyway. So I think this would be a really interesting season, especially because of COVID and because of just the ineptitude of our leadership, and, you know, the suppression of the medical field's ability to help more people. I think, you know, this is really a great time for AJ to use his voice, for lack of a better word.
You've been in the entertainment industry for a long time. Have you ever thought about doing anything else?
No, I have not.
This was it. This was it.
Yeah, because think about
Well, you said you
it.
wanted to be a basketball player.
Yeah, that didn't work. Yeah, didn't work out. But especially at this point, I have been in this business for so long that there's not much else I'm qualified to do outside of this business. Now, again, there are a lot of things I can do within the business because I've grown up in it. But for me to leave the business and go do something else, I would literally be starting from scratch.
But you never had any other dream other than being an actor?
No, because once I found, acting at 9 years old, I was like, oh, this is it. And once I was, accepted that I sucked at basketball, okay, acting is it. And then, and then poetry. I mean, the poetry has been, it has always been a big part of my life. So again, there are many things I can do within this industry. And I dig the industry enough to want to stay in it, no matter how frustrating it can be. Like one of the things we always talk about, all of the things, most of the things that happen in our field that frustrates us. A lot of those things can be found in whatever field you're in. No matter what it is you're doing, whatever field you're in that you absolutely love, there are times where you still get frustrated by said field, whether it's people you work with, whether it's work itself, whether it's, progress not happening the way you want it to happen, just all of that. So, I do get that, every field has its ups and downs, and I'm in a field that I dig enough where I can ride the waves of the ups and downs, because no matter what field I'm in, I'm going to have to do that anyway.
So happy early birthday, Malcolm.
Thank you.
Do you have any idea when you guys are going to get back on set?
Maybe September.
September? Oh my God.
So Morris said August, and I was like, that sounds way too soon.
I think initially they wanted August, but it's really about when production can get all the precautions in place. For everybody to feel safe to come back to work.
Thank you so much for joining us.
All right, thank you, ladies.
Bye.
Have a great rest of the weekend. All right, bye-bye.
So, as you just heard, Malcolm, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Happy 50th birthday. As we said at the beginning of the podcast, if you want more of these interviews, donate. That's all we can say. Donate. Help us fund the podcast and get more of these interviews, because sometimes we may have to go another route. With Malcolm, we had a connection to him. Camille's been talking to him since he joined the show. So there was that. The other things we want to mention before we sign off are our social media, obviously, and where you can listen to the podcast. Our social media, obviously, Facebook. I have a Facebook page, which you can like, and it's the Resident Rulebreakers podcast. And then there's a Facebook group, and it's the Resident Fox fans, and you can actually go to the Facebook page and just click join group. It's right there at the top of the page. Answer the questions. Promise you, we won't let you in otherwise. And then we have our Instagram, which is at the Resident Podcast. Then there's the Twitter account, which is at Resident Podcast. And then obviously where you can listen: SoundCloud, Google Play, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and of course, you're probably watching this on YouTube. So, so there's that. Subscribe, please subscribe, guys, so you get an alert, whatever platform you want to listen to it on. So until next week when we talk about 1-5, which is called None the Wiser. It's the first appearance of Marshall. The week following, or the end of August, we also are going to be doing 1-6, which is No Matter the Cost. So, and that's a very powerful episode for Mina, actually. It's revealed she's got a clinic in her house and she's helping people in her neighborhood. And she gets mugged.
She shows off her Black Panther skills.
Yeah. So, we'll see you next week when we talk about None the Wiser. My name is Kayla.
And I'm Camille.
Bye, guys.
Bye.